38 more days before the season kicks off. USC hosts Missouri State. One more day until Lincoln Riley talks to the national media in Las Vegas. Big Conference Media Days. What are we going to learn? I'm going to tell you on this episode of Locked On USC.
You are Locked On USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Colkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC part of the Locked On Network your first listen every day. Whether you're watching this show on YouTube, download this podcast on any platform. This show is always going to be free. This show always appreciates your support, and this episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. There's going to be a lot of coach speak this week in Las Vegas. It's already kicked off. Day one in the books. Day two is today. You're watching this episode of Locked On USC on Wednesday the 23rd, and then USC gets their day Thursday the 24th. So, again, one day away from Lincoln Riley. There's going to be a lot of coach speak. Nothing's really given away at these types of events. The answers to the questions, you just get a lot of platitudes. Like I said, a lot of coach speak. Last year, one of the major topics was, the expansion, the 4 West Coast programs. How will USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, how are they going to adapt to the big conference? You have all the nuance that's involved with that, logistics, traveling, all those little things. So that was something that you talked about last year. Now you're year two. Now you're maybe going to use that 1 year sample as a review. Again, very small sample size, but that'll be one of the topics that's gone over, especially with USC. How did they adjust to their new home? If you're looking at their record, it didn't look like they adjusted very well. Anyways, some of the more frequently asked questions at these events, your conference media days, they include your team expectations, player and coaching changes, conference dynamics, all that kind of stuff. So in USC's case, they're going to talk about they had some coaching additions during the offseason. We've Rob Ryan, linebacker coach, Trovon Reed, cornerbacks coach, Trumaine Carroll, the new strength and conditioning coordinator. Lincoln Riley's going to talk about how the team's going to handle their, who has high expectations for USC in 2025? Not a lot of people, naturally. So we'll see where Lincoln Riley's, and I'm using finger quotes, expectations are in this season. So we'll go from there. It's one of the things that'll be going on. Like I said, in USC's case, how are they handling whatever that expectation is? Are they are they using it as bulletin board material? Are they not paying attention? When Coach Riley gets reminded that USC was picked to finish in the middle of the conference, 9th, I guarantee it, he's just going to smile, he's going to brush it off, and he's going to give an answer similar to something like, we don't pay attention to that type of stuff. That's for all you guys to dissect and talk about. We only talk about what we do. But look, here's something else. Here's another storyline, and I'm not even going to have to ask this question. I brought it up a couple of times already on the show. I wrote about it over there on wearesc.com. However, now, on 3, nationally, they're kind of sounding this rhetorical question. If there's one thing we have all come to accept as fact, okay, about Lincoln Riley, it's regardless of where he is or how his program is doing, he's going to have an awesome quarterback. His resume is too extensive with Heisman Trophy winners and NFL draft picks to say otherwise. But USC quarterback Jaden Mayava isn't in Las Vegas representing USC. Why? ? That isn't the end-all, be-all, but a quarterback entering his first season as a full-time starter after winning the job back in the back half of last year would warrant an invite, right? This isn't to make Riley's choice to leave him home sound fishy. If Riley felt like Maiava couldn't play, he presumably would have dipped into the transfer portal to find a new quarterback. But regardless of whether Maiava's absence means anything, the entire world is waiting to see if USC's offense can get back to looking like an unstoppable Riley force. So as I mentioned, I've brought this up a couple of times. Why isn't Coach Riley bringing his presumptive starting quarterback, Jaden Maiava, to Las Vegas with him? Again, not the end-all be-all, but I guarantee you he's going to get asked that question. Here's another question he's going to get asked, and I'm not going to have to ask it, but if the opportunity presents itself, I will. He's going to get asked about the USC Notre Dame rivalry. It's going to get raised because, look, Indiana's head coach, Curt Cignetti, he was questioned about their, and I'm kind of adding my own op-ed here, their marshmallow soft out-of-conference scheduling. They dropped Virginia recently. Even Barry Odom, Purdue's new head coach, kind of took a subtle jab and says, yeah, Indiana's got a pretty easy schedule. Ryan Day, Curt Cignetti, those guys spoke on day one, big conference media day. They took a page right out of the SEC conference, their manifesto. Quote, we're the best conference, yada, yada, yada. And we also play 9 conference games. And then Curt Cignetti, he took it a step further. He said, talking about out of conference scheduling, he was trying to be funny. Look for that 15-minute PR hit. We figured we would adopt an SEC scheduling philosophy. And then he went on to talk about how many SEC teams play FCS teams. So yeah, he got his cool little jab in there. He was speaking up for the big conference, mostly for his team and for his trying to rationalize why their out of conference schedule is so poor. But look, yeah, you get that soundbite, but what it does, when you have more than one head coach talking like this, it encourages others to start doing it. And that's my concern. And if you don't believe me, he's not a head coach, but Dave Portnoy, Barstool Sports, part of the new Fox Big Noon Kickoff show, he wants Michigan to start scheduling like Indiana is out of conference. No. No. It's a terrible idea. So yeah, Coach Riley, he's going to have to talk about scheduling as well. We've talked about it here. I think my biggest takeaway in Las Vegas will be what other players have to say. When they talk about USC, they tend to parrot the same talking points, but every now and then someone kind of, decides, hey, I'm going to be my own guy. I'm going to be a little bit more candid, give you my real feelings. That's the stuff I look for. You look for little kernels, something you can take away from that. I was joking earlier today on the Inside the Trojan Huddle podcast. Don't forget to check that out when you're done with this episode of Locked on USC. Other things I was looking forward to at Big Conference Media Days. I said, I'm kind of looking forward to how Deshaun Foster developed. I'm taking the over this time on him being able to speak more than 2 sentences. I'm also curious about the pending sanctions that are hanging over Michigan's head. The Big Conference Commissioner, Tony Petitti, he kind of addressed it a little bit. I guess they got the letter and now they're challenging it. So we'll see. We'll see what kind of penalties the NCAA handed down. But on July 24th, okay, Big Conference Media Day, Las Vegas, Lincoln Riley, Kamari Ramsey, Makai Lemon, Elijah Page. They're going to represent USC. You're going to get a bunch of questions, get a bunch of answers from those guys. Obviously what they learned from last year, all those close losses, those are the questions that are going to be coming in from everybody around the country. They'll be able to talk about why they're going to be better in 2025, and why they're going to be ready to compete for a conference championship. Everyone's going to have put their best foot forward. It'll be just that standard fare, all the regular questions that you anticipate. That's fine. I know what to what to anticipate in this type of setting. However, July 28th, got this email today. All the local USC media, all the credentialed guys in the press, we're going to be back on USC's campus 28th. We're going to hang out with the assistant coaches, 40 players that we selected. And USC football will host its 4th annual media day with the assistant coaches and over 40 players. Again, that'll take place Monday, July 28th. Starts at 11:30. It'll run till around 3:30 in the afternoon. This was my favorite part of the email. This will kick off the beginning of fall camp and an opportunity for the media to connect with the Trojan coaching staff and players before the first practice. So there it is. I think the first day of fall camp officially will be the 29th. I have a feeling the players have to be checked in on the 28th. Whatever I learn in Las Vegas, it's not going to stay in Vegas. I'm going to bring it back here for you guys, for my everyday listeners. And if you're not an everydayer, become one. You got keep this show growing. If you're watching on YouTube, click that red subscribe button, hit that bell notification, smash that thumbs up, keep the comments coming. You guys are doing a great job. I want to see if we can get this thing up to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We're moving at a pace, but the pace could be better. So tell your friends, tell your family. Let's make this happen. Let's make this happen. Again, whatever happens in Las Vegas, I'm going to break the rule. It's not going to stay there. I'm going to bring it back here to Locked On USC. You're going to hear all about it. But I'm looking forward to the 28th, the local gathering. I think that's going to be a little bit more interesting. Assistant coaches, they tend to be a little bit more forthcoming, a little bit more candid. At least I think so. So lots of stuff coming up. Lots of good stuff coming up. And most importantly, the season. It's almost here. 2 more segments to go. I'm going to tell you why USC has a very good defense. We've talked about it during the offseason. I'm going to rubber stamp it and put an exclamation point on it here in the next segment. And then it's a big conference versus SEC Mexican standoff. Yeah, a lot of war words going on during media days. Have you ever decided you want to head out to the ball game? If you're a baseball fan like I am, go Dodgers. You want to go get tickets, and you don't want to stress out about it. Well, I've had an experience recently. If you watch the show, you've heard about it, but maybe it's time for you to check out GameTime, because that's how you can buy tickets without stressing. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. Trust me on this. Trust me. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merchandise. Maybe you want to get a group of friends together. GameTime will make that possible for you. GameTime makes buying tickets fast and simple. In fact, did you know prices will actually drop the closer you get to that first pitch? It's true. That's how it works. And they got these incredible last-minute deals. Clear seat views. The lowest price guarantee. It takes all the worrying out of buying tickets. GameTime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On Major League Baseball, making it super easy to browse their app. And if you're looking for some cool games to go to, I believe Minnesota's in town this week. So, Dodgers, you got friends from Minnesota, go check it out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms will apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, and you're going to get $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Lincoln Riley has a defense in 2025. He had a pretty good one in 2024. I think it caught everyone by surprise, even USC fans. I don't think it's going to catch anybody by surprise in 2025. All offseason, I've been singing the praises of the defensive line, the absolute monster potential those guys have. I have zero doubt, none whatsoever. Keyshawn Silver, Devin Tompkins, Jade Abasiri, Kobe Pepe, those guys are going to crush it inside. And I didn't even mention the biggest one of them all, Jamal Jarrett. Big Jaw Jarrett. Your jaw will drop when you see him get off the bus. He's one of those types. Here's what I'll say. If Coach Henney turned Jaw's light bulb on upstairs, opposing offensive lines, you guys are screwed. Period. End of story. Game over. And just as excited as I am about the interior of USC's defensive line, I'm equally as excited about the defensive ends and the edge play. Because if one of those guys on the inside, just one of those guys, brings it and can become one of those guys who demands that double team type of attention, then yeah, Anthony Lucas, Cam Fountain, Braylon Shelby, those guys are going to be able to create some chaos in the backfield. Become Mr. Mayhem. That's a great, by the way, I love that Allstate character. I want somebody on USC to become every week. Who is Mr. Mayhem? For the most part, I think last year USC was pretty strong against the run, and now they're bigger and deeper up front. Right? I've gone over the players. However, check out USC's linebacker room. This is what I want to kind of focus on. The size and the weight of USC's top 6 linebackers. Okay? This is who Rob Ryan is kind of looking over saying, yeah, I like the guys. So you got Eric Gentry, 6'6", 225 pounds. Desmond Stevens, 6'3", 232. Jaden Walker, 6'2", 231. You got the transfer from Penn State, Tamir Robinson, 6'3", 230. Garrison Madden doesn't see a lot of action, 6'2", 230. Anthony Beavers, full-time now linebacker, 6'1", 225. I actually think he's bigger than that. I'll try and get confirmation from one of my sources, but yeah. Are there any 240, 250-pound thumpers in there? No. But you know what? Tell you what, let's compare USC's linebacker room to Ohio State's. Okay? You've got Sonny Styles. He's 6'4", 235 pounds. He's a senior. You've got Peyton Pierce, a sophomore, 6'2", 223. Junior, Averill Reese, 6'4", 238. Freshman Riley Pettyjohn, yeah, USC fans, you know all about that name, 6'2", 220. Another freshman, Garrett Stover, 6'1", 220. Not a lot of difference in size, is there? So it's more than comparable. And look, nobody complains about the Buckeyes when it comes to linebacker play, their production. I get it, the schemes are a little bit different. They're not vastly different. USC's linebackers I think, are going to be the biggest benefactors from USC's improved size and depth up front. Again, if someone in that front 4 or 5 can demand double team attention, it gets to the point where there's not enough blockers for the defensive attackers. I mean, I'm looking forward to Jaden Walker, see what he's capable of doing. I want to see Anthony Beavers, man. Go blast some dude like you did in the bowl game a couple years ago, creating a fumble. I talked about on Locked On USC the other day. That's the difference that USC's defense has to show this year compared to last year. They were good, but they didn't create a lot of turnovers. They have to step up in that department in 2025. But with better line play up front, the linebackers can now start, making plays. And again, when you've got a preeminent front line up front, it makes everything better on the defense. The linebackers, especially the secondary. They don't have to cover as long. But this one is all about the linebackers. Everybody says, hey, USC needs to they need to get bigger. I just showed you Ohio State's. They just won the national championship. Are there other programs that might have more size? Sure. But it's not going to be that much different. So for all of you out there pointing fingers, we need to do this, we need to do that. It's college. It's not NFL. And it's also about the scheme. So the big conference, the SEC, they're like they're creating a Mexican standoff, and they're making the Big 12 and the ACC having to choose a side. The SEC, they already had their media days last week. Their commissioner, Greg Sankey, he was pretty outspoken. He said he wants his teams in his conference to play 9 conference games. But he also, he wants to advocate for that 5 plus 11 playoff format. In other words, each conference gets their conference champion gets an automatic bid, and then 11 automatic not AQs, I'm sorry, at large. The big conference, they play 9 conference games. They're more of an advocate for the 4-4-2-2. Excuse me. In the first segment, I mentioned Indiana's head coach, Curt Cignetti, took that jab at the SEC. Well, On 3's Brett McMurphy, he reported the Big Ten doesn't plan to compromise at all with its stance on the future of the college football playoff format. And he says if the SEC keeps it at 8 games, guess what? We're not going to do that. You're going to do it our way, or we're just going to continue pointing fingers at each other. Excuse me. Curt Cignetti actually took it a step further, and he called for, and this is just with regards to out-of-conference scheduling. He wants a standardized schedule to help make the selection process easier. These are his words. Not only do we want to play 9 conference games and have the 4-4-2-2-1 playoff format, we want to have play-in games to decide who plays in those playoffs. Championship weekend, let's play 3 versus 6, number 4 versus number 5. You want to decide that on the field and make sure everybody's strength of schedules what it needs to be. Kind of ironic considering his out-of-conference schedule. Let's make everybody play 9 conference games, and on championship weekend, number 3 will play number 6, number 4 will play number 5, and there's still room for another at-large in that format, end quote. Here's where he kind of almost got caught speeding a little bit, though. Earlier, remember, he said he likes the soft out-of-conference scheduling. If it's good enough for the SEC, it's good enough for Indiana. Well, he kind of contradicts himself here. When he tried to explain why the big conference should always have 4 automatic qualifiers. Quote, you want to put the best teams in the playoffs, give the best leagues the AQs, but make them earn it with play-in games. And we wouldn't be opposed to a Big Ten SEC regular season game every year. Okay, that's interesting. We need to standardize the schedule across the board if we want to have objective criteria for who should be in the playoffs and who shouldn't, and we need to take the decision-making off the committee to some degree. I agree. I love the idea of an annual crossover game with the SEC. Love it. If you know me, you know exactly how I like USC to schedule their out-of-conference games. So if we got Indiana supporting this, 9 conference games plus a crossover with the SEC, all right, now you're at 10 games. Now let's just take it one more step. Let's standardize this. Add one more from the one more game from the Power 4 conferences. One more out of conference game, whether, from the Big 12, the ACC, SEC, I don't care. In USC's case, Notre Dame. Now everyone's at 11 games. Now your 12th game, that could be, pick someone from the Pac-12, Conference USA. That's a good out-of-conference schedule. And now it's kind of standardized. Now you can go, all right, let's look at strength of schedule. Who beat who? Where did it happen? Where did you lose? And like I said, it's getting down to a war of words where conferences are just pointing fingers at each other. So the big conference commissioner, Tony Petitti, he said this. If you're 6-3 in the Big Ten, I would argue that's a good record if you stumble in the non-conference. I don't know why that would disqualify you from the playoffs. Okay, I disagree on that last part. If you're playing a crappy out-of-conference schedule and you lose, yeah, that should definitely disqualify you. So I'm not on board with that at all. So we'll see what comes out of the next couple days, out of the big conference media days. I'll be there for day 2 and day 3, at least for part of day 2. I'll be driving in sometime, hopefully around noon, get over there, see what I can see. And then all day Thursday, I'll be hanging out, checking out what USC has to say and what everybody has to say about USC. And then just a few days later, back in LA, USC's local media day, all the assistant coaches, 40 players, all that news and information I get to bring back to you, my everydayers here at Locked On USC. And don't forget, when you're done making Locked On USC your first listen every day, check out Brian Smith over there at the Portal Show. You can catch that on YouTube. And then when you're done with the Locked On Network, get on over there to wearesc.com. I will be back again tomorrow with another episode. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.